Greetings fanboys and fangirls, Jared here with another Masterverse video review, and today we're going to be having a look at the brand new Mattel Masters of the Universe Masterverse Princess of Power Grizzlor. And indeed, a powerful princess he is. This is, of course, one of the first villain figures we've gotten for Princess of Power. I'm very excited about it because Grizzlor has always been one of my favorites. What's interesting about this figure though is it does not take the traditional approach that many might have been expecting, and instead follows in the footsteps of some of the previous Princess of Power figures that we've received in the line. But of course, before we begin, make sure that if you haven't done so already that you're subscribed to the channel. Also, be sure to like the video because that really does help us out, so if you're wondering what you can do for us, that would be the very best thing you could. And with all that out of the way, let's begin. First of all, we can clearly see Grizzlor in the packaging here, and he looks really good. I particularly like the old school font of Princess of Power. Everything else about the packaging is what you would expect. Of course, nobody in the business does packaging artwork like Mattel does for their Masters releases, and this is no exception, with another piece that looks like it could have walked straight out of 1985. On the side, we see that it just says Grizzlor. He is the hairy henchman of the evil horde. And on the back, we get more breathtaking artwork with a really cool bio. Few are feared across Etheria more than the bloodthirsty beast Grizzlor. Captured and brainwashed by Hordak, Grizzlor now loyally serves the leader of the evil horde as gatekeeper of the Fright Zone, as well as feral soldier to be unleashed in the battlefield. Fright Zone, oh, give it to me, Mattel. And this is a general release, so you shouldn't have any trouble finding him eventually in multiple retailers, especially online. I got mine from Big Bad Toy Store, and here is the UPCM barcode. Alright, and at the bottom we do have just a little roundup of the other figures in the wave. So far I have Merman and Grizzlor, and I'm really hoping that my Buzz Off and Faker get here soon. With all that out of the way, let's get him out of the packaging and see what the figure is like. And here he is out of the packaging, Grizzlor, as a giant Japanese kaiju, or keiju, whichever one you want to say. Oh my gosh, yes, my background here, you may be wondering why on earth I did this. If you didn't check it out, I did a Mezco Ultraman review just a little while back, and I had converted my Masters diorama that I usually use into like the little buildings and all of that. And I thought, you know what, let's just put Grizzlor on here just for fun. So yeah, this is Grizzlor as a giant Japanese monster that, say, Ultraman may fight. So there you go, in case you ever wanted to see that. All right, enough messing around. Let me switch it back. And here he is all out of the packaging, Grizzlor. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit, first of all, just about the design decisions that were made by Mattel for this particular figure. First off, I think it's obvious to everybody who's familiar with vintage figures that this really isn't necessarily based on the original vintage Grizzlor action figure. Just like She-Ra wasn't based on the original action doll, and just like Catra wasn't really based on her toy counterpart either. So this follows in the pattern that they've been doing with all of these Princess of Power figures for Masterverse, which has been instead to capture their cartoon counterparts. Now, one can assume that during the Classics run, that finally all of the legal issues and everything got cleared up with Filmation, and Mattel was finally able to do Filmation versions, and then eventually Super 7 took that over with Grizzlor themselves and many other characters. And so I think what we're seeing here is, even though it doesn't identify it as animation or anything like that, all of these figures seem to be themed towards their Filmation cartoon counterparts. So bearing that in mind, that's kind of what we're looking at right here, is we're looking at the modern Mattel interpretation, or reinterpretation I should say, of that old cartoon model and that particular look for Grizzlor. Of course, one can argue that Grizzlor sort of appeared more in this vein in early mini-comics appearances as well, and it only stands to reason that Mattel's original conception of Grizzlor as a character probably looked a little bit more like this, because probably the early artwork that Mattel gave Filmation to use looked more like this, which would then support why the mini comics look that way. Either way, this is the Grizzlor we've got, and let's go ahead and just look very closely at a lot of the visual decisions that were made. First of all, we definitely should focus on this head sculpt right here, and I think that this head sculpt is just straight money right here. This is beautiful. They have really captured that kind of old school bestial look of Grizzlor and so many of the other beast-like characters and Masters, And I think they've done a fantastic job. But not only that, they've kind of fused together the more savage and more monstrous, more outrageous look of the original vintage toy with the Filmation cartoon, which was a little more streamlined, a little more Chewbacca-esque. So I think it ends up looking really cool. I also like that they gave him the yellow eyes, which are really well applied. And not only is all the sculpting really nice for the monster face, what they ended up doing was using paint right around the edges, all around the face. And you can see this, that they've created an artificial kind of hairline to where the hair is coming forward around the face, kind of framing it all the way around. And I think that was a great way to sell that, and it works really well. I also like the deep brown wash on the face. This could have been kind of a more average looking figure or a cheaper looking figure, but that wash took it to a whole new level and sold it in a way that I don't think they could have without it. So it can't be overstated how much that helps. I really like the harness right here. Now, of course, the bolts on the harness are not painted or anything. So you can see these are just black plastic. But I really do think the Horde bat looks really nice. Hordak or Horde Prime, whichever way you interpret the mythos, must be the most narcissistic person since Batman himself. And everybody who has a bat logo for something, they just seem to put it on everything. But Hordak takes it a step further and just puts his face right there, or Horde Prime. Moving down the figure, we can see that if you look under the harness, he's wearing this big soft goods furry kind of coat, which of course is supposed to be Grizzlor's actual fur. Now this is a great throwback to the original old school toy, but obviously this is taking a much more restrained kind of approach. Everything is just a little less messy and huge. So I think that it looks really nice. I like that they went with a darker brown color, and this brown does a fine job of matching pretty well with the head up here. It is slightly lighter than the loincloth and the head, but I think that gives it a little bit of variance and keeps it more interesting. So I really think it looks good. The body sculpt itself right here is pretty much reuse of the Beastman stuff that we've seen previously in Masterverse. At least I believe so. You can tell me in the comments below if I'm wrong. And they've done a great job of kind of washing in this darker, deeper brown paint into it, and I think that was a good decision. You can just barely see his Horde band, like his membership band around his bicep. I'm not sure if which way it's supposed to go exactly. I've always thought that you should see the Horde logo on the side like this. The way that it came packaged is it was way back here. I don't quite think that's right. I think it should be right here. So I'm really glad that they did go to the trouble of painting that. Once again, the bracelets and the belt right here both kind of suffer from a lack of paint. I think they would have been a lot more interesting if there were silver framing each one of them. But this really is a budget price 7-inch figure that is already brimming over with detail, and we'll get into that later. Down here, he does have the Horde logos that once again are painted, so I do appreciate that. The only paint defect I have is a tiny little scuff right there on Hordak's head on the bottom of the boot. So it's really nothing too bad at all. It is also worth noting that these loincloth pieces, he's wearing like furry shorts under it, and they're very, very rubbery and flexible. As a matter of fact, they're more flexible than any of these similar kinds of pieces that I've seen in the entire Masterverse line. So I think that that's really important to note, and it's a really good thing. Speaking on that, I'll just show you his articulation really quickly. The head just goes up and down. He can dig down a little bit more than he can go up, but it's still nice. You can kind of turn it, but the fur kind of gets in the way. Now, I'm sure you could work with it, but I don't really feel like going through and ripping out the fur, kind of trying to strain it. So it definitely does feel like that there's some limitations there with how much you can turn it, but it's fine. With the shoulders, he can go way up, so it's over 90 degrees. You can also bring it all the way around. Nothing's going to inhibit it because the fur coat is kind of off to the side, and you see how it just gets out of the way. So that worked perfectly. You can see over here there is a bicep swivel, and that double jointed elbow works really well. There is a swivel at the wrist. There is a great deep hinge right there at the wrist as well. Down here at the chest, you can see that we have our usual Masterverse range where he can go all the way around. And then he does have a cut at the waist right here. It's kind of hard to see with the fur, but it's there. And with the legs, because that loincloth is so flexible, he's not limited whatsoever to get a forward kick, which is really saying something for a figure in this scale with a loincloth. Not only can he kick straight, but he can also do straight up splits. So you're going to be able to do everything with this guy. He has better articulation at the legs than, you know, several of the He-Men that they released. So that's really saying something. And Mattel, whatever it was you did here with the material to make this thin rubber, keep doing it, because this will just be a home run for you every time in articulation. There's a great thigh swivel right there on both. And of course, you get a double jointed knee, which works really well. Down here, we do have a boot cut. We do have a hinge right there at the boot, and we do have great ankle rocker pivot. And you can see that even those really deep ones he can get pretty much no problem, and he can flat foot those. So it works out really well. So let's talk about Grizzlor's accessories. He does include this awesome Horde axe, and you can see that it just goes right in the holster back here. Holster is very appropriately sized where it can just hold it right there at the hilt. So we just pull that out. The fur does get in the way a little here. See how it kind of clogs that? So that is just one thing to point out. He does include 2 grasping hands, so if you wanted him to hold it in his right, he totally could. And seemingly they have learned their lesson about painting these really friction heavy handles, because this is unpainted on the Horde axe right here. He's the better for it because previously we've seen that paint wear right off. What they have done though is they've gave a little bit of some washing here with some gray and things to kind of make it look like it's been used, and that was a really good touch. Would have been nice if this was red, but still, it looks really good, and you can see the logo on the other side. Not only that, but Grizzlor does include this awesome crossbow. I really love the look of this thing. Not only is it really gnarly looking with all the teeth and all that, but check it out, it's got one big eye right there. There's some energy right here. However, I don't believe it can be pulled back. This appears to just be an effect that's clipped in. Another interesting thing about this is that it just has kind of a wrist bracelet right here. So you just put this right over top of his bracelet and boom. So it's not really a crossbow that he holds, instead it's wrist mounted. So I think it looks really good. It holds pretty well too. It can come off if you kind of mess with it too much, but it really does work out pretty well, all things considered. And when you've got both of these accessories out, man, the posing just is fantastic. So I really do think that this comes off really nicely. Not only that, but Grizzlor does include a hand for his right so that he can hold his axe in the other. And for his left, he includes a grabbing hand, the I'm gonna get ya. So I do think it's cool that he has the 3 fingers and the 1 thumb, which is accurate to the character. Naturally, there's a ton of comparisons we could do, but for me personally, I always think the most interesting comparison is when you can take out the Classics counterpart. Now, unfortunately, I never got like the Filmation version from Super 7, so I don't have that one. Instead, I do have the standard Grizzlor, and I actually have him with some of the accessory pack stuff to turn him into the 2000X Grizzlor. So let's talk comparisons. Definitely these designs are so disparate from one another that there isn't a whole lot to talk about, honestly. It's hard to believe that these are even the same character. Pretty interesting to have them together. I don't think it really tells us anything about which one is better because they're so different. I will say that it's awfully impressive that this guy is punching way above his weight as a $22 figure or so. And this guy, he was more than that at the time, even though he was a direct-to-consumer kind of item. And you had to buy all kinds of accessory packs and things to get him to look this way. So that is something, depending on how you gauge that. And here's Grizzlor from the Origins PowerCon pack. I really like this figure, and I really think that it's cool that they did the darker colored fur and everything. I still don't have the standard version. I was one of the folks that are going to have to wait, I guess, for them to get those direct-to-consumer ones out that we put in an order for, and I guess it's going to ship this fall or something. I don't know. So we'll see about that. But it's really fun because these guys are sort of comparable because both of them feature the kind of darker brown than what we're used to seeing. Here he is alongside of the fantastic She-Ra Princess of Power figure that truly is one of the best Masterverse figures that they've come up with so far, and man, do they look great together. Grizzlor really has the appropriate scale here. Again, it's incredibly important to note just how cool it is that Mattel have opted to go the Filmation direction for their Princess of Power figures. It's even more obvious once you have Hordak beside of Grizzlor. And here we have Grizzlor and Catra, once again just emphasizing that Filmation look. And to further emphasize just how well that Princess of Power fans are eating, here is Shadow Weaver alongside of Grizzlor. And there's Frosted too. So there's a lot of great Princess of Power representation in this line. And I've always felt that Beastman in the Masters of the Universe 1987 movie with Dolph Lundgren looked a lot more like Grizzlor from the Filmation show. So here is movie He-Man. Of course, this is the Masterverse body, but it uses the Classics head. So I think they look great together. Keep in mind, I do have Grizzlor crouched way down. And here they are, all of the available She-Ra Princess of Power figures in Masterverse. And wow, what a display they make once you have them all together. Beastman just looks right at home with the whole crew, and I cannot wait to see what else Mattel has in store for us from this great cartoon subline that they have going. So it just looks wonderful. All right, friends, well, that will certainly do it for me for this review. I can only hope that you've enjoyed watching it just as much as I have making it. Definitely this Grizzlor is just a fantastic looking piece. And for $22 or so, $23 depending, this guy is a fantastic bargain. It really does feel like sometimes that Hasbro are the only ones that are really pushing the envelope on the price of these figures. Whereas you have companies like McFarlane and Mattel who are both just pushing as hard as they can to get you good value for money. At least that's certainly how it feels to me. With figures that are in that 7-inch scale range, and they just keep pushing harder and harder and harder to deliver for us. And Grizzlor is another great example. What's even more fascinating is that Grizzlor is not even a deluxe release. He's certainly large enough to probably be considered a deluxe, and he certainly has, a fair amount of accessories. It does make me wonder if perhaps Grizzlor was maybe at one stage planned to be a deluxe release. Maybe he included a more toy-accurate head, perhaps. Regardless of what style he was released in, it really does astound me that he's still just considered a basic figure with all this cool stuff, and he's just so bulky. It's a pretty big win for collectors and for Mattel. I really hope collectors aren't sleeping on Masterverse. I know that a lot of us really do like to, and me included, of course, likes to focus on Origins, but I think sometimes it's really easy to kind of let these Masterverse releases slip and not be paying as much attention to those, when the truth is there is a whole lot of good stuff to be looking at here. So I definitely hope that this has piqued your interest if you've not been keeping up with Masterverse. The truth is a whole lot of these figures are incredibly cheap to get a hold of now and have been discounted. Of course, there's some that are a little more difficult than others, but still, you really couldn't go too wrong even if you were trying to piece together a complete collection right now. And I wonder if that's always going to be the case. It probably won't be. So if it's something you've thought about, if maybe you've only been into Origins, maybe this is now the tipping point that it's time to get into Masterverse, because there is just a lot of goodness and I don't want you to leave it at the door. And of course, friends, if you haven't yet, I hope watching the video today has inspired you to hit that subscribe button or maybe even the like button. Either one of those things would really help us out, and of course would not go unappreciated. Be sure to stick around here on the channel because we do have plenty of Masters goodness coming your way, and it's something that of course we're very passionate about here at Fanboys Forever. And as always, God bless you and yours, and I'll see you on Fanboys Forever. Fanboy out.